Morning, good evening, good afternoon, whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening. I'm Billy C. I want to give you my thoughts on the Sergey Kovalev Anthony Yarde fight yesterday from Russia. First and foremost, I want to apologize to my normal viewers and listeners. We've been having tons and tons of technical issues, specifically with our YouTube connection. Not sure what the hell's going on with their streaming service, but it's been affecting us big time. We're sampling something right now that my man Mitch turned me on to. So get that off my chest right now. So a lot of the bells and whistles that you used to seeing, we're not going to see today. I just wanted to give you my quick thoughts on the Kovalev Yarde fight from last night. First and foremost, in case you missed it, Sergey Kovalev improved to 34 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, with 29 of his W's coming by knockout when he stopped Anthony Yarde in the 11th round. I think it was 2 minutes and 4 seconds. It was a terrible broadcast. It was painful to watch and listen to. ESPN Plus needs a lot of work to do. This whole Dre stuff. I don't even know if Andre Ward likes to be called Dre, but I was kind of sick of listening to all his success when he was doing a broadcast. That's just my opinion. Timothy Bradley, solid as usual. Bernard Osuna. I'm sorry. There's no love for him, in my opinion, as a main broadcaster. I like him in the corners and stuff. But I don't know about you, but I thought the broadcast was extremely painful, going over and over and over. Now, it could have been the Russian side of it, the communication, I don't know the word I'm looking for. If they were all on the same page, which caused them to keep referring back to Andre Ward's career and how great he was, which the funny thing about Andre Ward is that if he was promoted correctly, maybe he would have been half as famous as he thinks he was. Listen, he accomplished more than most, but still, I'm just not that crazy about him. That's all. That's my opinion. He did beat Sergey Kovalev not once but twice. Many people feel that the low blows had something to do with it, but back to my thoughts on the Kovalev Yarde fight. All right, my bottom line opinion is this. Sergey Kovalev looked old. He looked slow. He looked like any of the other light heavyweights out there will kick the crap out of him. That's what he looked like to me. Anthony Yarde would have won that fight should he have been in a little better condition. I think Timothy Bradley and Dre made some great points about his training regimen. I have never heard of success coming from no sparring as you're preparing for a fight. I think that had something to do with it. If anything, it had to do with how his body reacts to a fight with another guy throwing punches at him, in between rounds, that rest period. He did almost stop Kovalev in that one round. I believe it was the 8th. If I'm not, I'm sorry, maybe the 9th round. No, I'm sorry. It was the 8th round where he came on real strong, had Kovalev in all kinds of trouble, and couldn't finish him off. Kovalev was there. Almost looked like Kovalev was ready to quit. I'm not so sure what's left for Sergey Kovalev. No disc, no problem, no disrespect for Kovalev, but he clearly ran out of gas. Yarde ran out of gas. I don't know. Where do they go from here? Well, I think Anthony Yarde has a career ahead of him. I think he needs to, tighten up, maybe train a little differently. I also think that prior to the beginning of the fight, Timothy Bradley was making some points about his level of opposition on his way up to this fight. Remember, it was his first loss. He's now 18-1, so he's had 18 fights against not that great opposition. I strongly believe, and I've been saying this for years, I strongly believe that a young fighter coming up, if you don't progressively increase their level of opposition, they're never going to get better. And I think last night Anthony Yarde proved that. He was fighting a guy, even a 36-year-old shell of what he used to be, and that's my opinion of Sergey Kovalev. He still was facing the toughest opponent that he ever faced. So I really think that Kovalev, I don't know what's left for him. I don't know how much money he made on this fight, but I don't see him giving, for example, a Bivol any kind of a challenge. If I'm Sergey Kovalev, I have an opportunity to go out on top, so to speak, right now as a world champion. I think he should consider that. I think that even with Buddy McGirt in his corner, and listen, I have always, if you've been listening to the show, I have always been a big fan of Buddy McGirt as a trainer and as a fighter. And one of the reasons is he'll stop a fight, and he definitely was in a position to stop the fight after that 8th round because Kovalev was basically almost out on his feet, in my opinion. So hats off to Buddy McGirt. I think he did a fantastic job. Sergey Kovalev, when he uses his jab, he was effective. It was a stinging jab. Was the jab as powerful as it seemed when Yarde went down and out, or was Yarde so exhausted that a solid punch put him down and out? We'll never know. To me, it was a solid, crisp jab. Definitely had some pop behind it. Knocked Yarde on his ass and kept him there. And, another thing that confused me, that's a knockout. That wasn't a TKO. They were referring to it as a TKO. Round 11, 2 minutes and 4 seconds, TKO. Louis Pavone stopped the fight. He wasn't getting up. Why not just count him out? He wasn't getting up. I mean, that was clearly a knockout. The early rounds were, in my opinion, in Yarde's favor. I gave Yarde the first and third rounds. In my opinion, he landed more powerful shots, even though Kovalev seemed to be the busier fighter. Really, I wasn't impressed with Kovalev. He won the fight. I was more interested in seeing what Anthony Yarde was going to do because he looked the part, and he at times was frustrating Kovalev with his movement, even though his footwork is, as Timothy Bradley said, pretty poor. Him trying to copy the Mayweather patented defense with his shoulder. I wish fighters would develop their own style and stop trying to emulate other people. Floyd Mayweather was successful with his shoulder roll only because he was Floyd Mayweather. Not all fighters can do it. If you don't have the rest of the package, basically you stand flat-footed, and that's what he did. And he seemingly did not have enough. I'm talking about Yarde. Did not have enough skill to really press the issue for Kovalev. Let Kovalev keep his distance and work the jab. One thing is just so clear. It's so obvious that if you work the body against Sergey Kovalev for any length of time, you're going to break him down and win the fight. Personally, Canelo Alvarez beats Kovalev. If they sign that fight, that will be Kovalev's last fight. I think Kovalev should walk away right now. That's my opinion. No, like I said, no disrespect. He won the fight, but that's what I would do. Now, one other thing I wanted to comment on, Anthony Yarde reportedly turned down $1 million step-aside money to face Kovalev. He was offered $1 million from Canelo to let Canelo fight Kovalev. He said no. I don't know what he made for this fight, but I hope he made at least $2 million because it was a foolish thing. Even Andre Ward and Timothy Bradley said they would have taken the money, $1 million to basically not have to fight. He would have still had a fight, assuming Kovalev lost the fight. If Canelo beats Kovalev, does Yarde still have the fight? Maybe not. Maybe so. Maybe that's Kovalev's way of getting back in the mix. I don't know. But as far as the fight last night, Kovalev winning by knockout, 11th round. I think he was on his way to a decision anyway. Going into that round, I had Kovalev up 96-94. It appeared to me that he was going to win the decision. He was winning round 11. If he would have, assuming he doesn't knock out Yarde in the 11th round, on my scorecard, he wins that round. And even if Yarde won round 12, providing he didn't stop Kovalev would have won that fight on decision, at least on my scorecards. The other fight that we got to see on a very painful ESPN Plus broadcast was Makabu improving to 26-2 with 24 knockouts when he won a majority decision over Alexei Papin. And Ilunga Makabu squeaked that one out. If he didn't drop him in the final round, he might have lost that fight. I was a little surprised that it was a majority decision. All of the judges scored it 115, 113. Two had it for Makabu, and one had it for Papin. And since it was in Russia, without that knockdown, I think Papin wins the fight. Makabu didn't seem to have his foot on the gas for the whole fight. And although he was the more talented fighter, Papin did have his foot on the gas. They both got tired towards the end. And I like the comment from Timothy Bradley saying, or it might have been Bernardo Osuna. I don't know. Like I said, it was hard for me to watch that fight, that broadcast, I should say. The fight was exciting. That they both wish it was a 10-round fight because they were both pretty tired. But interesting to see what the scorecards would have said. I did like seeing a fight card from Russia, to be honest with you. And those ring card girls, oh my goodness. I wish I was in Russia last night, to be honest. But it was cool to see the crowd there supporting Sergey Kovalev. But like I said, Kovalev's performance, he beat Anthony Yarde, stopped him, won the fight in dramatic fashion. But he should consider how he goes from here. Anyway, I just wanted to give you my thoughts real quick. I know we've been struggling here with the show with technical stuff. And as a matter of fact, right now, I can't even bring my cohorts on because I'm not in we're not using our normal software, so I have no connection to them. Which I apologize to them and you for, because our show is not complete with the likes of Dax Khan and Sal Senecola and Alex Papali. I'm thinking Anthony Yarde. And, of course, the beautiful Emily Harney. So give a shout-out to all of them, and hopefully we'll be back next week for a full show following the Vasily Lomachenko Luke Campbell fight, which I'm looking forward to. I enjoyed the little backstory of Lomachenko during the killing time for the Kovalev-Yarde fight. The underwater thing, the training, holding his breath for 3 minutes, pretty impressive. Some other news, Triple G and Deverenchenko will be fighting in New York City at Madison Square Garden in October 5th. It's a tough fight for Triple G. Deverenchenko is no slouch. I know his record might not indicate it, but Triple G has been aging. And to be honest with you, I have a couple of emails I want to read real quick just to give them the props, because we haven't had a chance to do this. My man Chip says, I find it odd that every time Wilder has a real challenge, a drug test has failed. Now, he's referring to Dillian White, who had been named the mandatory challenger after the Ortiz rematch for Deontay. Mitch says, I mean, it is the WBC clean boxing program, and the WBC is in bed with Al Heyman, but I won't go there. I mean, first it was Povetkin, then it was Ortiz. Now it's White, who was the mandatory for Wilder for 2 years and got no step-aside money or forcing, or meaning the WBC, forcing those guys to fight. He says it was exactly like that with Adonis Stevenson for 5 years. I'm not saying anything, but I'm just saying. I agree with you, Mitch, for sure. I agree with you. Another email. This one's from my man James. He says, "Hey, Billy C. First off, let me say I miss your show." He says, I'm sorry. He says, "First, let me say I miss your daily show. I know you have the television channel right now, but it's no substitute for current boxing news and editorial from a guy who knows his stuff." Hey, yeah, if you haven't checked out our 24/7 boxing channel on Jinico USA, check it out. Some really good stuff we have on there, past shows and all of that. He says, "In any case, I'm mainly writing regarding the upcoming Pacquiao-Thurman fight." This is how long it's been since I read this. He says, "My question is, does anyone give a F about this fight? Don't get me wrong. I think Keith One-Time Thurman is an exciting fighter to watch. I simply haven't thought much of Manny since he phoned it in against who you're not allowed to name on your show." He says, "Simply, I can't picture Thurman needing more than 5 rounds to beat up Senator Pacquiao." Well, James, no disrespect. You were wrong, my man. You were wrong because Manny Pacquiao looked really good in that fight, and Keith Thurman looked like what I thought he's become. Not the same fighter. And I applaud Manny for that. And really, the only fight that I think Manny Pacquiao should really go for right now is a rematch with Floyd Mayweather. A couple weeks back, a month or so, I asked for everyone's thoughts on their top middleweights of all time. And my man Coach says Harry Greb, number 1, Stanley Ketchel, number 2, Carlos Monzon, number 3, Walker, number 4, Robinson, number 5, Serdan, number 6, Hagler, number 7, and Tony Zale, number 8. Love this list. I got to say that Robinson, in my opinion, is number 1. In middleweight and welterweight. Another email. This one's from my man Rick. He says, "What's up, Billy C? I heard you were hating on the computer rankings today." This is back a month or so ago, and that's what prompted us to talk about the middleweight rankings. I didn't like the way somebody had put out a all-time great middleweight rankings, and I didn't agree with it. He says, "To my understanding, it's all numbers based off of wins, title fights, and other criteria like strength of opposition. I think it's a good system." He's talking about the computer rankings. I was upset with how they can have some fighters above others when they didn't fight anyone. I think that the opposition should play a much bigger role. He says some of the old timers like Harry Greb and Stanley Ketchel have lower scores because of their incomplete records for all of their opponents. Also, those guys tended to fight the same opponents over and over throughout their careers. But these guys fought 200 fights. Stanley Ketchel died in his 20s. Harry Greb, I mean, come on, you can't compare Harry Greb with anybody from today's era. And they fought each other over and over. That wasn't a bad thing. These were tough fights. Just because fighters today only fight their opponent once, think about this. When you fight the same guy several times, you don't think that fighters actually adapt and learn what they expect from you and what's going to come? I mean, it's harder to fight the same guy over and over. You fight a guy once, and the guy who lost says, "Oh, man, if I got another shot, I would have done this differently or that differently or this." You look at these old-timers who fought each other 6 times. I mean, how often do they got to change up their game just to be competitive? I disagree with that thought, Rick. I like that they fought each other multiple times. He says, Hopkins is a legit top 3 all-time great middleweight. Listen, Bernard Hopkins is definitely an all-time great middleweight. Of today's era, in the last 20 years, he's clearly a top guy. But Bernard Hopkins was an ordinary fighter compared to the eras that we're talking about. With Harry Greb, I mean, B-Hop still would have been competitive. But top 3 all time? I love B-Hop. Well, the second part of B-Hop's career. But I don't know if he's top 3. I'll give him maybe top 10, maybe top 15 middleweights of all time. But top 3, I can't. He says, as far as Canelo, he has every name on his resume. Guys like Cotto, Mayweather, Mosley, Triple G, Jacobs, all those guys have high rankings of their own and one would have to evaluate Canelo's ranking every time they fought, whether or not they were past their primes. I think it's critical to factor in when a fighter fights an opponent. Floyd Mayweather fought a lot of guys when they were past their prime. Canelo's following that. Is that still get the same credit as when you fought guys in their prime? Canelo and Mayweather fought. Canelo was in his prime, but his experience level wasn't there. You got to give Floyd credit for identifying the fact that now was the time to fight Canelo, because if he fought him today, he wouldn't stand a chance against Canelo. So Floyd knew that, and Canelo has learned from that. And if you look at the path that Canelo takes right now with his choice of opposition, I think it's pretty clear. He says, and Billy C., for about 10 or 12 years ago, you had Greg Haugen on your show, and he told a story about how he refused to touch gloves with Hector Camacho because Camacho was a queer. I was wondering if you have that interview in the archives and can play it again sometime. It was the funniest things I ever heard. I do have, listen, I have 15 years worth of interviews we have saved, and I've been promising for years that we're going to put them all together and put them on a CD or do something, maybe play them all. I don't know. One other thing I wanted to point out or discuss, Canelo Alvarez was stripped of the IBF title. There's some unrest in Camp Canelo. Him and Oscar De La Hoya apparently aren't seeing eye to eye. DAZN is having some issues. They invested all that money, and Canelo didn't even fight. We're getting Tyson Fury on that, or I think it's the weekend after, in Vegas, fighting Otto Wallen. I'm in trouble speaking today. So it is what it is. Boxing is, it appears to be doing well in terms of availability, but the opposition and the opponents are still fighting each other, meaning are still not that great. I don't like the way fighters get built up to a world championship opportunity, and then everyone says they were exposed. They're saying that about Anthony Yarde last night. It's not the fighter's fault. The managers and promoters protect them so much because they don't want them to lose. And in a way, it actually hurts the fighter. If the fan would just accept that fighters, it doesn't mean a fighter is bad if they have a loss on their records. I do like DAZN and what they're evolving into. ESPN Plus better get their broadcast a little tighter. I'm not so crazy about what I watched last night. Like I said, maybe it was the Russian connection. Showtime is still doing okay, except it's all in bed with the PBC. And the PBC fighters, quite honestly, are exactly what I'm talking about. These guys pound their chest. They say they're the best, and they fought nobody. And when they do, they come up short. So I wish everybody would just get along and have, cross-promoted fights. So we'll see what happens. But anyway, again, I apologize for us not being able to do the show the way we intended. We are experimenting right now with another streaming service, which actually worked pretty well. And so I might move towards that in the future. It is a little more difficult from a production standpoint about bringing the rest of my staff on, but we'll work that out over the next few weeks. I like what I'm seeing right now. So very simple, and it worked well. So we did change some lighting in the studio. We've done so much here, and we haven't had a chance to showcase it because we haven't been able to get live. I mean, there's been so many issues, and Dax and Emily and Alex and Sal have all been ready, willing, and able. And it's been technical issues. It's been upgrades. It's been changes of equipment. It's been me, so we apologize for that. But listen, I get emails all the time. I get texts. I get phone calls. Where's the show? This and that. Listen, I would love to be back on a daily basis. But, I started getting, and I'm being honest, I started getting turned off by some of the fan base. I've been involved in the sport of boxing for over 33 years. I've done pretty much everything that you can do in this sport except train. And it bothers me to hear some kid, and no offense, I didn't mean just a kid, because there are some knowledgeable young fans out there, but some young fan that watches a couple of fights on TV and then starts making it like me or Dax or Sal, even Emily or Alex, don't know what we're talking about. Listen, boxing is subjective. It's a lot of it is opinion based, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But don't discredit someone that has the pedigree, so to speak. And it's very disheartening when you hear people say, like the Charlo brothers. They're great fighters, great fighters. Great fighters? What are you kidding me, man? They're not great fighters. Deontay Wilder, hey, listen, if you've watched any of my shows, you guys know I'm not a huge fan of him. The person is not great. And his skill set is awful, except he's got one thing, a hammer. He's got a hammer right hand, and that's why he's where he is today. Everybody knows I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan, but I don't know if Anthony Joshua can, honestly, and all due respect to Anthony Joshua, I don't know if he can handle the power of Deontay Wilder. I really don't. And he doesn't possess the skill of a Tyson Fury, where he can keep Deontay Wilder at bay. When Deontay and Tyson Fury have their rematch, you're going to see Deontay Wilder go in for the kill quickly, because he knows he can drop Tyson Fury, and he's not going to get sucked into trying to box him. As far as Anthony Joshua and Ruiz, apparently, despite already having a signed contract, Andy Ruiz was trying to hold out, and from what I hear, Hearns threw him an extra $1 million to having the fight in Saudi Arabia. I'm looking forward to that fight. I think a lot is on the line for Anthony Joshua. I don't think he should have lost the first one. No disrespect to Ruiz. I like Ruiz. I think he's a breath of fresh air in the heavyweight division. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see Ruiz lose the rematch and then fight Wilder before Wilder fights AJ. I think Wilder may be overlooking Luis Ortiz a little bit, but then again, Luis Ortiz has aged more. He's probably now pushing 60 because, I don't believe the age that they have listed for him. But it is what it is. So we do have some stuff coming up. But don't forget, next week, we are going to be doing a show, whether we have to do it like this or whether we're back to our normal production studio. I don't mean physical studio. I mean our broadcast software. If that's working, then great. We will be back. If not, we will do something like this. I'll be able to get the guys on the phone. I think I'll be able to. I'm not sure, but we will see how that works. And we're going to be talking about the Lomachenko-Luke Campbell fight. It will be coming to us from England. We'll be on ESPN Plus. I think the continuity between the British broadcast and the U.S. ESPN Plus broadcast will be much better. And I do believe we are going to see our guys ringside, not in a studio like they were Russia. I just hope they bring those Russian ring cut girls over to England. That would be nice. But, anyway, hey, listen, guys, thanks for joining. And again, we apologize. We're going to be back. If you do want the show back on a daily basis, you got to drop me an email. You got to spread the word. And we got to get some more sponsors to do it. And that's the bottom line. Hey, listen, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Ciao, baby.